Attention campers, this is your camp director. In today's all-camp event for the Undead Merit Badge, we will be discussing Bubba Ho-tep, Dead Alive, Death Becomes Her, 1985's Fright Night, and Return of the Living Dead. Joining me is camp counselor Chris Baker Scott. Additionally, as a reminder, the sloppy joes being served in the mess hall today do not contain human flesh, no matter what a certain camper may have claimed. And as always, it's going to be a great day at Camp Film Camp. Hey, we're here. It's our first episode. Welcome to Camp Film Camp. I'm your camp director, Matt Chapmond. Joining me today is our camp counselor, Chris Baker Scott. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so, honored to be the first guest. I'm excited.
Yes, I'm very excited as well. So if you're new to this, which you probably are because this is our first one. This is the show where we talk about campy movies, movies that are exaggerated or over the top or just bizarre. And sometimes it's they're just funny or they take a step in a direction that you wouldn't expect from the genre. Or sometimes on this show we're going to talk about mundane films that aren't campy at all, and we're going to determine if they are, that we're going to call them out when they're not. But today I think we've got a really good slate of really great campy movies because we are working for the Undead Badge. So yes, once you've watched this movie, once you watch this episode, you will have earned the Undead Badge. Congratulations. Chris, were any of these movies first-time watches for you?
Yes. Honestly, Bubba Ho-tep was a first-time watch for me.
Okay.
And with that, I had known of the movie existence, obviously. And I'm a fan of Bruce Campbell. I am. But I've always saw the cover of Bubba Ho-tep, and I'm not really an Elvis person.
Right.
Like, I love music, as one does. But Elvis just always kind of escaped me. Like I never really got into Elvis as like an icon. So that's why I just never sought it out. But I'm glad that I watched this movie for this.
Oh, excellent!
I'm glad that I watched it.
I'm glad you watched it as well. I guess I should go through the movies that we're covering on this before we get too far into it. So for the Undead Badge, we are covering Bubba Ho-tep, as Chris just mentioned. Dead Alive, also known as Braindead if you're in a different country than America. And if you look it up on like Letterboxd, it's under Braindead. But Death Becomes Her, a classic from my childhood. The original 1985 Fright Night. And Return of the Living Dead, which was the only first watch for me. I had never seen this, and like you, I'm so glad I had a chance to watch this, which we'll get into it in just a moment. But so first things first on this, our first little bit of this of the episode is going to be just us going through the movies and talking about them for a few minutes. Once we do that, then Chris and I are going to rank them, and then whatever ends up being our combined top two, we're going to deep dive on. We're going to score them. One of them is going to walk away with the Undead trophy, camp style, in a camp war. Let's start. Let's kick it off. Let's talk about Bubba Ho-tep, which is the one you watched for the first time. What did you think?
Watch for me. I really enjoyed it. I guess this entire time, here's what I thought the movie was. Having not even read a synopsis about it in the past, I thought it was Bruce Campbell as an Elvis impersonator fighting just a mummy. Like that's literally what I kind of thought the movie. That's all it was.
Right.
And sure, that's like an aspect of it somewhat, but it really surprised me.
It could be that, but we don't really know.
We don't know. Yeah, that's the thing. And I think when that was dropped in the first act of that being kind of the premise, it got me. Like I was like, oh, okay, that's actually an interesting way to do this. Because it's a vehicle that was meant for Bruce Campbell, it seems like.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
definitely.
it seemed like he was made for this role.
Absolutely. I first saw it the first time I saw it when it came out. Like, I didn't see it in theater because I lived in a smaller town, and a movie like this was never going to make it. I don't even know if it made it to theater. I'm sure it did in limited release. But when it came out on DVD, I worked in the video store, and we used to get to take, once they came in, we could take them for a day before they even came out, before they were released to the public. I took this one out, and I watched it twice. Like, I was a huge Bruce Campbell fan. Evil Dead 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love the entire Evil Dead series. Because I love campy movies, Bruce Campbell's obviously going to be a figure in my my film life. But yeah, I absolutely dug this movie. There was supposed to be a sequel that was coming out, Bubba Nosferatu, which was going to have Paul Giamatti playing Colonel Tom Parker to Bruce Campbell's Elvis, which that still could happen, but it's been, literally it was like the year after Bubba Ho-tep came out was when they had first announced that, and that was 2002 that Bubba Ho-tep came out. So 2003, it's been 21 years since that. So like, it's probably not going to happen, but it'd be really cool if it did. But yeah, so I was really big fan of this back in the day. I will say it didn't hold up for 40-year-old Matt in the same way it did for 18-year-old Matt back when it came out. But I was very entertained still. Like, it had been a while since I'd seen it, and watching it, I really did enjoy it. There's a lot of great little one-liners. What's interesting to me is that while it is campy, it does spend a lot of time being dramatic, almost some might say melodramatic, but it actually spends a lot of time trying to ground itself. What do you think about that?
I agree. There are moments where like people are like speaking with emotion, like as much as they can be, they're acting like people, like in this kind of absurd world. And another thing that I loved was, and I kind of just have notes about each of these movies based on like the setting where everything, like where it's kind of set. I guess it's like this old folks home or something that it's set in. That setting was very, campy, obviously, but it was also such a choice, like visually. When the one character is like walking through the halls and comes across another patient who's just in an iron lung, like just in the hall, that's perfect. And like steals her glasses. Like that's such a perfect like example of, oh, we're just in this wacky kind of world. Like, that's why a sequel would have been really great, because I would love to see this world that these characters live in expanded, even to like the side characters, like the lady who just comes up and steals the person in the eye of those glasses. It's very interesting world that they live in. What about let's hear about Ozzie Davis as JFK. They dyed me this color. I thought it was honestly a good choice, because again, we're in this weird world and with these absurd characters, and I thought it worked. It just did. Like he was funny. His room was perfect. Like the fact that his room and that goes back to the setting. Like his room is decked out in just these references to JFK, and like I think there's even like a little model of like the book depository like in that set, and he has like this massive 4-post bed. Like he's still a patient, but his room is so outlandishly like just set decorated this way. It's perfect. Loved it.
what I love about him as JFK is that first they have to get us to buy in that Elvis is alive and that he's in this old folks home and stuff like that. So we have to buy into that, and they do that. And then they all immediately give us this other thing we have to buy into, which is far more ridiculous. But I absolutely love it. Because if you believe the Elvis thing, you can believe the JFK thing, but it is enough of a stretch that you're still like, okay, this is Elvis, but is he JFK?
Yeah.
But they don't, like, the movie doesn't resolve that, which I love. I don't think it should. I'm so glad it never resolved that question of that, because it just is or it isn't for you. That's really irrelevant to the movie. This guy believes he's JFK, which is the important thing. I like that he says they filled they put sand in the hole in his head where he was shot, and just all of it, and the little references, and right before they go off into battle, Elvis's one question is Marilyn Monroe, how was she? And, that kind of stuff. Like, it's of its time. I mean, it's date that obviously is a dated thing, but it does make it feel like these two are, but at least believe each other and who they say they are. That little camaraderie, which I really enjoyed toward the end of that movie.
Yeah. 1,000%. Also, I just have this line that I loved from JFK, just when they're talking about the scarab beetle that they discovered. He's talking about it. He goes, "I thought it was Lyndon Johnson, but I was wrong." That's a good line. That's funny. Like, that literally got a guffaw out of me.
Yeah. A lot of his little JFK references were very, very funny, because even if he is JFK, he also is mentally unwell. Regardless, even if he is that.
Yeah, there's still something going on there.
Right.
And I also thought this, I mean, not to take any accolades away from the director, and maybe it's because it's set in Texas, but the first note that I had, and it was when they're carting off the first body of the old woman who steals glasses. She is murdered by the scarab or the bug. They're carting her body off, and those two characters felt very much like they would fit in like a Mike Judge world. And I think that honestly it might just be because like that kind of Texas, Texan like attitude. I'm just possibly thinking of King of the Hill, obviously.
Right.
But immediately I was like, oh my God, this feels very like Office Space, or like something of the Mike Judge world.
It does, just off reality. Like, that's the kind of feeling that you get from him. Yeah. So there it is. Bubba Ho-tep. Did you have any final words about Bubba Ho-tep before we move on to the next one?
No final words. We can move on. I mean, yeah.
Okay. Let's do it. All right. So our next film in this slate is Dead Alive. Now, before we started this, Chris did allude to the fact that this may not have been one of his favorites. Let me just start before we get into Chris's feelings on it and say, I love this movie. This is, I will say this is my favorite of the slate. We'll get into our rankings in a little bit, so this is not going to be a surprise later, but this is my favorite of the slate. When I started working at a video store when I was 17, Lord of the Rings had just started coming out, and I was obsessed with it. And so I was looking at movies by Peter Jackson, and I went back to this one, and I'd always seen this on like shelves, and I was like, the cover there, you see with the skull stick popping out of the mouth there. I'd always seen that, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting, but I don't, it didn't necessarily grab me. When I found out it was Peter Jackson, I got it, and man, did it open up a world of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies
bad
for
taste.
me. Just this slew of campy, dark comedy horror movies that are just
like super splattery.
Yeah,
they're just
at the top of the DVD for this, it says "goriest movie of all time," which I'm sure that doesn't hold. I'm not sure how that holds up today, but watching it, I was like, I can see why they would say that. This movie is just wall to wall blood and guts and spray everywhere. But it's, for me, it's very funny. It's just so sharp and so well written, and the kills are very, very interesting. And the thing that, like, you would expect from, which usually happens in a zombie movie, is that, like, the first ones happen, then the person is trying to escape this and trying to survive. In this movie, he's trying to collect them all and keep them safe and keep them away from other people, but also keep them from being hurt by anybody else. It's very, very funny. And then when everything breaks bad, it's excellent, and it
goes like it just flies off. Like it
it does. Let's hear about your feelings on this.
My feelings are this, and I know that I'm an outlier on this within like horror communities, especially like online horror communities. It's a movie that people, it's not even a love or hate thing. Like people typically love it. I have to admit, I don't have the same relationship with Peter Jackson as a filmmaker. Okay. I'm gonna get probably so much hate on this. I am not really a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings movies.
All right. I know that's sorry. We're gonna have to end this early. I actually know that about you, so it's not as
that's crazy. And the thing is, I want to love it, and I can appreciate them for like the filmmaking that really went into them. And I think for me, it's just there's like a little bit of a disconnect with me with like the story that's being told. And I know it's a great story. I just don't. It never really struck me. But I had seen this movie like as like a teen, like because I was growing up. Like I come from like a very like horror centric like house. Like growing up, like loved horror, everything horror. Like whether it's super gory or whatnot. And I discovered this just around, my teen years. And I thought, oh my God, it's crazy, over the top. At that time, I think the only thing kind of similar to it that I had seen was maybe Evil Dead 2, something like maybe. And even this is like, it's crazier, right? Like, it's like all the slapsticky kind of like splattery, like everything.
Right.
And I think because it was so over the top like that, it didn't resonate with me as much because I felt like it was a little too over the top. But now I do respect it as being that's a choice.
Right.
Exactly. I think at the time I didn't know that was a choice.
Right. Yeah, I could see that. If you're not realizing that it's intending to do this camp thing, then I could see how that would be a barrier for it. For me, it's always fun to look at Peter Jackson's early work and kind of see where you can tell the through line from his early stuff to this huge franchise, huge multi-year franchise that he filmed back to back. Like that, he was given this money. And it's like, it's kind of insane when you look at these early ones. But when you look at the filmmaking style, it seems completely different. But there's actually a lot that is very, very similar because you got the dolly shots, you got the forced perspective with the creature, you got the amazing makeup work. I mean, this was 1992, so the makeup work was not what it would become, and it was on a very low budget, so it was delivered, but it's still very good and very fun, and feels real for that world, which I completely love.
And I will say it was nice to revisit this because, like, I probably wouldn't, in all honesty, revisit this as a movie. But it was nice to because I think I didn't really get in my teen years that they're making I didn't know what a choice was in film. I didn't know things you could be intentionally making a decision when you're making art. Right. And now that's what you do. I know that that's what art is. You're making choices. But yeah, that was nice to kind of get that.
Yeah. Before we move on, I will say that whether this one makes it to our final two or not, it's just one that I absolutely adore. It's one of my top favorite horror comedies. It's just one that constantly delivers for me. I really think that the writing is really sharp, and the comedy feels almost Looney Tunes, but the film itself completely lends that, like, every actor in it knows what the movie that they're in. The directors know what movie they're making. Everything feels so intentional that it completely works cohesively for me, and it's just one that I really, really love. Even though I'm not a big gross out horror person, like this one, I don't care. I just absolutely love every moment of this movie.
And remember that you did bring up a good point where of then standards, yeah, it probably like the kind of the grossest, like goriest thing. But now we're in a world when it comes to horror, especially where the Terrifier movies are kind of have taken that mantle. And here's the thing: I respect this. This might be a hot take. I respect this movie more than I respect the Terrifier movies. And I tried to like those. I really did, but there's not really a plot going on with those.
I have only seen All Hallows Eve, so I haven't even seen the actual Terrifier movies. But yeah, so
I sat through Terrifier 2. I haven't seen the third one yet, but Terrifier 2 is so long.
Well, we're not here to talk about.
I know, that's true. Side tangent.
We are here to talk about Death Becomes Her. Now, I know this was a favorite of mine as a child, but I have not seen it since I was a child. And looking back, I'm like, wow, I watched this as a child. But it was the 80s and 90s, kids. That's just how we did it back then. Yeah. But I'd like to hear from you because I know that you love this movie.
I do. Okay. Also watched as a kid. Fun fact, it's like one of my mom's favorite movies. She loves this movie. It's, in my opinion, this movie is like the epitome of like camp.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I literally think like from the story that's being told of like these two women who are aging and they're like wanting to find some way to either reverse that or like no longer, age. They live in LA and like everything is very visual and your stock is only as important as like, your appearance. And just this, they're both kind of like these femme fatale characters, kind of fighting over a man, but not really. It's just them fighting each other because they just have this jealousy and this hatred towards one another.
Neither of them seem to like Bruce Willis,
but
they want him. Like, so
right. And honestly, they just want him for their own means. Like at some point, when he's introduced to Meryl Streep's character, like it's just she, number one, falls for him because he's a plastic surgeon and she, wants his services. But then also it's to stick it to her frenemy and like steal another partner from her. So he's not really wanted. And then when they are, in the throes of, their undeadness, they both just want him to maintain their bodies.
Right.
So it's nothing. They don't actively care about him. It's very much the selfishness.
Right. Yeah. This movie was one I liked to watch a lot when I was a kid. There was just something about the effects, the twisted head, the hole in the stomach, like that was all very good and very funny, that I really enjoyed. I will say that this one doesn't hold up for me as well as it used to. Again, like Bubba Ho-tep, doesn't hold up as well as it used to. However, this one does. Okay, so the beginning and end don't gel with me as much as I thought they would. The beginning is so many quick cuts, like they go through that 1973 to 1992 so fast that like it just feels very jarring going through that 14 years. I said 1973, but that's not right. 1978 through whatever it is. The 14 years that they go through there it happens very fast. And and the ending is good. It just doesn't hit me as well as once they're both dead. That is the movie for me. Like that is where all the camp is awesome. That's where the movie really ramps up for me. I think that once they both die and resurrect, like that is where this film is at its best. It's very, very funny. Everything with the hole in her stomach when she sets down in front of on the spear or whatever.
Shovel thing,
the shovel. And it's through like all of that. It's all very, very funny. Every time Meryl Streep has to adjust her head and move it around, and having to tape up her stuff, like that's all very, very good and very, very funny, and I really, really dig that. I will say that Teenage Matt, which was probably the last time I watched this when I was a teenager, was trying very, very hard to see beyond the necklace of Isabella Rossellini.
I was about to say, okay, let's talk again about camp. Isabella Rossellini, like her scenes. Perfect. And I think I've figured out now, because as a kid I watched it and I was drawn to like her as this character, and I think now in my adulthood, like as like a gay man, I get it. Like I'm like, oh my god, no, it's what she's wearing, and just like she has this energy about her, and like how she lives is perfect. Like these hot men who just like wait on her. And like, oh my god, everything about her scenes they just sell me on this movie. And then we get more fun of like people dying and then coming back to life.
Right. I agree. Isabella Rossellini is probably the standout character in this movie for me. She's very, because like I said, last time I watched this before now, I was way too invested in how her necklace was going to move so that I could see. This time watching it, I just realized like she is just her scenes are so funny. Her character is so over the top and so campy. And it's very, very good. That is everything with her and with them while they're dead. That's the best things about this movie. That's where this movie really lives. And just that magical, I love magical realism. And so like just that whole, like, this magic is real thing really, really works for me as well. Because the world is real and the world feels real, except for there's this magic thing that is happening.
There's this magic thing. And like, and the fact that they were warned, like they weren't told that this, it will make you immortal. I mean, I guess they could put that two and two together, but she just told them to take care of your body, not like that. Oh, like you can't die, like
right?
But, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the reason most stories about people getting what they want are cautionary tales, not not happy stories. And that's basically what it was. Like they got what they want, but it's a curse as much as it's a gift. Especially if you don't use it right, like they didn't.
Right.
But so I do really, really, really like this movie. It is a classic from my life. Did you have anything else to add before we move on to the next one?
Not too much. Just I love seeing this movie on the list because again, I might be wrong in this. I just feel like this movie is like a classic, like queer cinema. Like it's just.
It does feel that way.
So many gay men love this movie. Like I ended up rewatching it with my husband, and we were talking about it. We were like, "Oh yeah, this is definitely like." I feel like this is targeted to gay men a lot. Like maybe it wasn't made that way, but it has Meryl Streep, Goldie Hawn, like them, like in this frenemy situation. They're like both kind of these divas. Like it's perfect.
I agree. It
starts with Meryl Streep on stage, like as an aging like theater actor. Like, come on.
Right. Yes, I agree. It does feel very much like a movie for gay men, queer people in general. Okay, let's move on to 1985's Fright Night. Is this one that you? I don't know your history with this one. Has this one a recent one for you, or have you always been involved with this one?
Yeah. I actually watched this, I want to say in my late teens. It wasn't like a classic that we would put on like growing up, but I sought it out like I want to say maybe I was like 17 or so, and that was the first time I watched it, and I enjoyed it. Thought it was fun. I loved like the rear window of it all, of like, you know, any story, especially of like the 80s and also into the 90s, that deals with a kid who knows like that something's off and no one believes him.
Right.
Sign me up, because it's fantastical, it's fun. I imagine it's even better if you are a kid watching it, because you kind of feel that like, oh, you know, that parents or adults don't believe like in these things.
Right.
And I love that aspect about this.
Right. I actually saw this. I actually don't remember when I saw it for the first time, but my love for it was reignited a few years ago when I rewatched it, because the remake came out, and I love the remake. The remake.
I also love the remake. Yeah,
it's really, really great.
It does it right.
And I had watched that a few times before revisiting this one, and then I was like, I should revisit that, because honestly, I'm not sure which one I like better. And so I rewatched the original. Honestly, I love them both so equally that like they both do things that are very, very right, and they both have, you know, some things that the other one does right better, but they both, neither of them feel like better than the other in that way, and that's just kind of where I am. Like, I love both of those movies, and I really love this one. I will say that this one, the thing that it has going for it is the practical creature effects are very good in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
At least for the 80s. Like, I always love a good practical creature effect. That's why I love these old horror movies so much. Like, especially in the 80s, The Thing, stuff like that. Like, things that they obviously don't look real to us, but we don't care. Like that, they're so fun and so well done that you turn off that part of your brain and just enjoy the artistry of the thing in front of you. So that's I think where this one excels, because in the new one, a lot of it's CG, which is fine. I've never been a person who, probably because I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and everything looked fake. So it's like, and I saw the evolution of CGI. So there was a time when really, really bad CGI blew my mind. So it's like bad CG or CG in general has never been an issue for me. So that's not an issue for me. It's just the practical effects make the world feel so real, and that's what this movie has going for it. Also, Roddy McDowall as Peter Vincent is so good. Now, Peter Vincent in the remake is David Tennant, who is one of my favorite actors, and I love him in it. They're pretty equal. Like, one is not better than the other for me, but in this one, Peter Vincent just brings the camp so well. He's like the primary camp dealer in this movie.
Yeah, he definitely sells it. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. He is bringing the camp in this. Like, it's not like an all collective effort. It's on his shoulders. He's doing it. Like,
there are two characters who are really doing the campy work in this, and that's Peter Vincent and Evil Ed. How do you feel about Evil Ed in this movie? Because I absolutely hate Evil Ed in this movie. That's the thing that the remake does.
So you're more of a fan of Christopher Mintz?
Yes, I think he is. I think he is a better Evil Ed, because I feel an emotion about him when he gets
connected
turned versus Evil Ed, which I'm like, maybe he'll go away.
Okay, honestly, I kind of jive. I vibe with that. I do find him annoying, and I think in the original, and I think that might be just on purpose of like he's meant to like be like this annoying character, which is not how it's sold in the remake. In the remake, it's definitely, you do feel kind of like, oh, okay,
right,
sad, in this, it's just like, oh my god, like what you said, like maybe he'll go away.
Right. Well, because in the remake, you feel like you understand why they could be friends. I have no idea why.
No idea why they're friends. Yeah. Oh god. Yeah, I think with movies, especially movies of the '80s, I think in some of them you do have to like suspend your disbelief on like why they would be friends with, or why he would be friends with this person. Like, not to go on a tangent, but it's kind of like in Saved by the Bell. Why are they friends with Screech?
Right. Why is Screech friends with them? Like, that's the
they treat him like shit. It's two ways. Yeah, they treat him like crap, and then also he ruins every plan that they try to do. So why?
Exactly.
But with this, why would he be friends with Evil Dead?
And you know, like, I love the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World movie, but I've never understood and will never understand what Ramona sees in Scott. I understand what Scott sees in Ramona. No idea what Ramona sees in Scott. It's that similar thing, but you got to suspend that a little bit to enjoy the thing. The problem with the 1985 Fright Night is that I've already suspended my disbelief because there's vampires.
How
much do you want from me? But that
he's supposed to be friends with this jerk, like this kid who's like just annoying.
He's just so annoying, and like also Peter Vincent when he comes out, like, why Peter Vincent isn't like, I'll do this, but Evil Ed has to leave. Like, I don't, because he obviously hates him too. Like, I don't.
He just has to leave.
But yeah, it doesn't ruin the movie. Obviously, I still love this movie. I will say that of the teen actors, I do think Amanda, is it Spears, whatever, from Married with Children, who I weirdly had a crush on when she was on Married with Children. I'm not sure why, but I did. She's I think she does some excellent work in this movie. I think the other two teenagers aren't doing that at the same level. I think the adults, Chris Sarandon, and Roddy McDowell. I almost said Roddy Piper, the wrestler. That's Chris Sarandon and Roddy McDowell do the heavy lifting on the acting for the most part, and the teenagers are just kind of there. But I do think that she does some good work. I feel everything she wants me to feel. I feel her frustration with her boyfriend. I feel I can see that allure of the Chris Sarandon character. When she is turned, I feel upset about that. Like, everything that she does, I think is really. I think she does some really great work. She's just overshadowed by these other two teenagers who get more screen time or are just louder. But yeah, so I do really like this movie. And it's just it's a forever love for me, this one and the original and the remake.
We need
usually if I watch one now, I have to watch the other. That's pretty much the way it goes.
We need to set some time to talk about remakes, just so we can talk more about the Fright Night remake, because I have so much that such a good movie. It's done so well.
For sure, I agree. I completely agree. Okay, well, let's move on to our last movie on our slate, and then we'll get to our ranking, and that is Return of the Living Dead. This was the only first watch for me. And I'd never watched it because I'd seen a bunch of the Living Dead movies, and I do enjoy them. I like Night of the Living Dead for its contribution to film in general more than I enjoy watching it, and the kind of the social message that it has. Like, I enjoy that more than I enjoy just watching it.
Right.
Dawn of the Dead is a lot of fun. It has a good consumerism, whatever. But after a while, these movies start to feel very samey. They just start to feel
bleed in.
It's these movies just kind of feel like you can tell you're watching a Romero universe Living Dead movie. This one, so I didn't watch that for that. I was like, okay, I've seen enough of that, and so I just never got around to it. And then whenever I was putting this thing together, I was like, I've actually always heard things about this one, and I know that it's considered the campiest one, or the campier of the Living Dead movies, and so put it on the slate. Oh, I'm so glad I did. I absolutely loved this movie. I loved it so much. From the based on a true story at the very
Yep.
beginning. You know, I've always seen the there's that still of the date and time on the thing that people share every July 3rd. And I've always seen that, and I've never known what it was for. I used to, for some reason, think it was like from UHF or some shit, but it's obviously not. And then, like, one day I realized, oh, that's not from UHF. That's not a radio station. So it's like, okay, so I have no idea what that is from. Now I know because I've seen it. But this movie was so good. It was so funny. It had some real scares. It had some real suspense. But the creature effects were funny, but also really effective. And brains. They spoke, which I also love. Tell me about your because I know you love this movie. So tell me about
this movie.
Your history with this one.
This one I did watch as a kid. Like, I remember watching this movie as a kid and really, because I've never really been a huge like zombie person, I guess, when it comes to like monsters and horror. But for some reason, these zombies, I love them. I think they're great. And with my history on it is, when I watched it, I didn't know that horror comedies like were a thing, I guess. Because again, I was a kid. And for me, I watched it like kind of terrified of it because, again, being a kid, but also thinking, oh, it's silly though. And in my head, I couldn't like make that make sense of like why I'm kind of, this is a tense movie, but also there's some brightness to it of like how the characters are interacting together. Another thing that I remember even as a kid really loving was the punk fashion. Love the punk. We had different types of punks. Like the leader of the gang who like has the car and is driving them, he's kind of more of your like kind of tough punk, like the idea of like just this, very classic the punk.
Right.
And then in their group, they also have like their new wave kind of punks.
Right.
Like they all kind of just get together. Like it's just all the different punks are together in this.
Right. And what's great is that it's the very stereotypical 80s movie type punks. Like
punks, yes.
And the way they act, everything about that is the type of punk you'd find in a movie that you may not be able to have found in the wild in 1980s, right. Which is always, just that nihilistic, completely decked out head to toe, that whole like 1980s punk thing. And I really love that aesthetic too. And one of them is naked the whole time.
Yes. Okay. We love Linnea Quigley. I think that's how you pronounce her name, the actress.
Yeah. I think
she has been in some of my favorite like 80s horror movies, and she's not like afraid to just go for it. Basically, like I mean, she's in the style of movies, which of the time, not to be a downer, but they weren't really all that great towards like presenting women. Like a lot of them were like, oh, to sell this movie, you got to have naked women. And she usually fit in kind of in that. Like, I believe she also like gets naked in Night of the Demons. And yeah, so many other movies where that happens. But she's so great in it. Her dance scene is perfect. Oh my God. And it's also, I love that in this movie, these characters felt so grounded because they literally, like, they're hanging out in this tombstone or this graveyard. And she starts to go off on her whole spiel of like, what would it feel to like die, or like how would you like die? And then like she starts to play music and gets up and starts stripping, and all of her friends are like, oh, she's stripping again, or like she's taking her clothes off. It's like these characters like know, it feels like they know each other. Like this is just a thing for us.
Right. Yeah, I love that too, where there's obviously a history with these people, and like you kind of have to learn about these people's personalities based on how they're interacting with each other or what they're saying about each other, which is really great. It makes it feel lived in, which I really, really dug.
Yeah.
There was something very authentic about how everything felt in this, the way that the from the very beginning when he's teaching him how to do the work at the place where he worked, and everything. Although it all felt over the top, it also felt a lot of it also felt very authentic. It felt like, you might, if you're from a small town, you might have known people like some of these people. Like I really, really, really enjoyed that. I love how the zombies kept calling for more units.
Yes. Oh my God, so funny. So funny.
Like started out with the EMTs, like send more EMTs or whatever, or paramedics, and then it was someone just kept getting in a car. Every time they'd send a cop car, they get back in there and tell them send more cops, and then they'd send more cops and they'd eat them. I really liked that, and because it was so contained, it didn't feel like there was this. It didn't feel apocalyptic because the entire it was just the dead people around that basically
this immediate area,
in the immediate area who were affected by the smoke and the rain. Like the smoke got up there, and then the rain caused things.
Yeah,
the stakes were lower, and you could kind of focus on the characters and what was happening with the characters. It didn't feel like you had to worry about, is this going to be forever, or what's going on in the rest of the world? Because it wasn't. Nothing else was going on. Which is, in a zombie movie, it's like you kind of feels like generally like there's no escape, because wherever you go, there's going to be zombies. Here, they could have gotten out of there, and that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to escape, and it felt like if they could escape, then they would be able to escape, which is not generally. Usually, there's a feeling of hopelessness, which was not present here, which I really enjoyed.
And I'll also go back to one thing that you mentioned. You said that you had kind of just glossed off the Return of the Living Dead movie because you'd seen like zombie movie, like you're already in your Dawn of the Dead. I will say the trio of the Return movies are good. Like this one obviously is the best, in my opinion, the best of them. But even the second one, it's really good. It keeps the two main characters, they like appear again in this.
Nice.
And the third one is also really good. Like I would say the Return of the Living Dead trilogy. I check it out. Like the other two.
I really want to. I almost watched it immediately after, but I had other things I had to do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check out the rest of this. It does remind me that I thought it was really cool the way that where they set the lore in this is that that the movie of Night of the Living Dead exists in that universe, but it's based on a thing that actually happened, and that's why these zombies are different, and that way, because you're doing a series of zombie things, like eventually it's gonna feel played out, or it's gonna be like, how many times is the zombie apocalypse gonna happen in this universe? Like, but it's having that be the catalyst is that it was a true story that got made into a movie, and then this is that I thought that was very, very clever and very smart. I thought the writing in this was very smart.
I love the lore of the zombies. I love they gave them a reason of why they eat brains specifically, because it's like they're feeling the pain of dying and eating the brains, like that staves off that pain. Love that
scene where they strap the torso and head of that thing, and she was explaining that. That's such a good scene. Like, just not even from a camp perspective or anything like that. Like, that scene was just really good and really well crafted.
Honestly, I remember as a kid that scene always like had like an emotional gut punch to me, which I didn't expect like in my zombie movie. But you feel bad, like you're like, oh my god, now I feel bad for the zombies.
Right. Okay. Well, that is the Return of the Living Dead. Now we're going to get to our ranking of these films. Now, we actually went longer on all of those than I had originally intended on that. But that's fine, because I'm glad we got to have this conversation. But we're going to get to the ranking of this. So, Chris, what do you have at number 5?
At number 5, I honestly have Dead Alive.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I know.
Okay, it's not going the way I thought it would. Okay, at number 5, I have Bubba Ho-tep.
Fair enough.
Okay, and then what do you have at number 4?
I have Bubba Ho-tep.
Okay. All right, and at number 4, I actually have Death Becomes Her. This is not. We are not aligning on this at all.
Well, that makes it fun.
Yeah.
For my next one, I have Fright Night.
I also have Fright Night.
See, now we're in sync.
Now we're in sync. All right, at number 2, what do you have?
I have Return of the Living Dead.
Oh, wow. I have Return of the Living Dead also at number 2. And so that means your number 1 is...
Death Becomes Her.
All right, and my number 1 is Dead Alive. All right, so that means our ranking of these films, our combined ranking is at number 5, Bubba Ho-tep. At number 3, because they're tied, Dead Alive and Fright Night. At number 2 is Death Becomes Her, and our number 1 movie, as of now, we're about to actually find out which our number 1 movie is Return of the Living Dead. Now we are going to go a little bit deeper into them, which we actually went pretty deep. So we'll see what other discussion we have for it. We're going to discuss these 2 movies, and we're going to give them rating or scores based on their campiness, their acting, their writing, and their overall quality as a film. I actually didn't expect Death Becomes Her to make it here, so I'm going to have to come up with some ratings on the fly. But let's start talking about Death Becomes Her. Let's talk about the camp in Death Becomes Her.
Let's talk about the camp. Like I mentioned, kind of again, I shouldn't have gone too long-winded earlier, but the camp in this off the charts. Based on, I gotta say again, like the setting of it. You're set in this, like a large chunk of the movie takes place in this aging starlet's mansion, like just as a backdrop between all of this, kind of comical, these 2 men fighting each other and killing each other. That as the backdrop is very, very camp in my opinion. And what else? Also, Bruce Willis playing so against type.
Okay. I did want to talk about that because that's something that I did leave off of here. So Bruce Willis has a history with comedy where especially early on in his career, like in the 80s and 90s, his comedies were not well received. This movie was not well received. It was pretty it got mixed reviews, I would say. But it wasn't like a huge hit. I mean, it might have been a huge hit, but it wasn't a huge hit. But his movie Hudson Hawk.
That's what I was trying to think of. I was sorry. When you were saying his comedies, I was like, there was that one. Yeah.
Hudson Hawk. He was in Moonlighting, which I know was kind of the start of his career, which was a kind of a comedy, the TV series. But I think that for me, Bruce Willis is at his best when he's playing on type, even in a comedy, something like The Whole Nine Yards. Those movies, I think he does better in those because he's playing his on as on type character or whatever you say it. When he's playing against type, it is always Bonfire of the Vanities is another one that was not very well received. That he's kind of playing maybe a little bit different than he normally would. Because personally, I don't think he's like super funny. I don't think he's as funny as he thinks he is, at least that as funny as the movie thinks he is. However, there's a lot of it in there that does really work for me. He has that little run, that makes me laugh very hard. There are certain things that he does that really make me laugh, but there is a part of me that goes, gosh, if this had been Peter Sellers or even like 1992, let's say like Robin Williams or someone else who's maybe a little bit funnier, because you've already got 2 non-comedy stars playing. I mean, Goldie Hawn was a comedy star, but like you had Meryl Streep, who was not really a comedy star. I mean, she just come off of like. I don't know when Sophie's Choice came out, but it was pretty close to this. Like she's
Well, and here's the thing. I think that is why it works so well, specifically because Meryl Streep is cast in this, because she's meant to be like we're not meant to see her as a comedian, right?
Right.
And like she's going for it. She's making these choices. She's stepping into this like kind of a dignified role,
Right.
but still have that comedy. I like a lot of body comedy too. Goldie Hawn, yeah, I mean we've seen her do comedy in like Overboard and
Overboard. Net was
what,
what's the one where she's a football person?
literally just talked about this with my husband yesterday.
Is it Necessary Roughness or is that different?
Wildcats?
Wildcats. That's it.
Is it Wildcats? Yeah.
Wildcats. Yeah. There's she had done comedy. So when I say she's not really a comedy person, she is a comedy person. Meryl Streep wasn't really a comedy person, which I think works really well. Mm-hmm. Bruce Willis is the one part that doesn't like feels like a different person could have done it better. And maybe not even Rob. I said Robin Williams. I wouldn't. Maybe not even Robin Williams. I think somebody who could play timid a little bit funnier because Robin Williams isn't really that. So like someone like Nathan Lane or
that would have been perfect. Oh my god, that would have been. Okay, yeah. Don't ruin this movie for me with better casting.
Sorry,
because now I just think about it.
That doesn't necessarily take away how much I like this movie or anything like that. But that is like the one spot where I'm just like, okay. But, you know, would it be as big of a deal now if it wasn't a Bruce Willis movie? Like, who knows? So I get that it's there, but that is a thing for me. Which we're talking about acting now. Let's go back to camp because that's the thing that that's what we're talking about right now. Yeah. The campiness in this movie.
The camp
from when they die to win to basically end this movie, camp is off the charts. It's so good.
Yes.
It's very good. It starts out, the first thing that really made me laugh, and it made me laugh out loud, which is probably the only part of this movie that really made me laugh out loud this time when I was watching it, was the guy who died. What was he doing? Having sex or something like that?
Yeah.
And it cuts to it, and they couldn't. There's like he has that ridiculous smile, and then it cuts to him, and the smile is just so much bigger than you expect it to be. That made me laugh out loud. So actually there were several points that I laughed out loud, but that was the big first one where I was like, oh, that's very funny. So that's kind of where the camp. That's where you get kind of an idea where this camp starts because, like I said, the beginning happens so fast that it's hard to get a sense of really anything about what's going on, and the comedy during that part is just simply that she's fat.
She's fat.
And that
honestly,
that doesn't work for me.
As I was watching it, I even said to myself, I was like, the 80s really loved making fun of fat people. Like, if there's anything they loved, that's what it was. But
which does pay off it does pay off into a good joke when they see her again for the first time 7 years later, and she's like, and there's a bigger woman there, and it's like, oh, she's lost weight, and then she moves, and then it's the skinnier one. Like that joke does work because of that. It's just that seems to be really the only comedy parts during that opening bit.
It feels less mean-spirited for that payoff at the end, but it's still mean-spirited leading up to that. Like it's her doing the classic like single woman with cats. They did get a laugh out of me when she's like at that stage in her life and she goes to the kitchen and like there are cats around and she opens up her like cabinet and there's a cat in the cabinet. For some reason that got a chuckle. And then like when she plops down, like she sits down to watch this movie that Meryl Streep is in, and it's like a death scene of Meryl Streep's character getting murdered in this movie, and she just keeps rewinding that scene over and over again.
Yeah, that
was funny. Like you know, you felt for her. Like she obviously lost her partner to Meryl Streep, which is another thing they don't really examine. That Bruce Willis's character is not good. Like I don't think anyone in this movie is like quote unquote good, right?
Right.
But he dumps his girlfriend for Meryl Streep, and I feel like it's alluded to that he feels a little queer coded because he's super obsessed with Meryl Streep's like stage performance, and like he's kind of gushing over her. It didn't seem from like an attraction to her, just an attraction to the work that she does.
Right. Yeah. And I agree that I could feel that, especially because just the way he kind of, you know, in the 90s, especially the early 90s, timid men were played a little bit more effeminate. Like they were played like it does feel kind of like that queer coded thing, like that. I could see that.
Yeah, and then,
That's also why Nathan Lane would be awesome for that role.
Thank you. Oh my god. Because I think that maybe that was the intent of the writers, is to have this character to really lean into the campness of being like this, gay, surgeon, plastic surgeon who marries this aging starlet, and like there's no love there. He's crawled into a bottle and like he lives there, and now he doesn't even like perform surgery anymore. He works on dead body, like that's what he does. So yeah, like I like the campiness aesthetic of that specifically. But like you said, Nathan Lane would have sold that more.
Yeah,
if it were him.
Which again, and I know this is about the campiness, but there is a section on acting here. So let's rate. Let's score this on campiness. Where do you put this out of 10? If you're in the Olympics and you're holding up a scorecard, what is your score on campiness?
Okay, this is gonna be crazy. I hold up a 9.0.
I actually also hold up a 9.0. I think that the camp, when it happens, is very, very good. It delivers on the campiness so well, especially the stuff with them being dead. Like that is the thing with this movie. And for any of my issues with it on this most recent rewatch, the campiness was not one of them. It delivered completely on the campiness. So I also have a 9.0 on this one for campiness. Now that does bring us to acting. Bruce Willis for me is a downside. However, Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep just kill it. Like as we discussed, Isabella Rossellini is completely amazing in this and brings the camp. So for me, it is a net positive. It's just that Bruce Willis does bring it down a little bit. For me.
I agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
So for acting, and if you have anything else to say about acting, you can do it when you're doing your score. But for me, for acting, I did give it an 8.5 because the other three are so good that he just kind of brings it down a little bit. But it is enough that it kind of does dip it a little bit there. So, what'd you give it on acting?
For me, it was between. I was going back and forth between an 8.5 and a 9. I ended up giving it an 8.5, mostly from kind of what you said. Like Bruce Willis, he brought it down a little bit for me. But the women in this, they put in the work. Like their characters are perfect. How they're presenting is great. Yeah, I
agree. Let's talk about the writing. I should probably have looked this up. Who wrote it? But I know it was directed by Robert Zemeckis, and say what you will about Robert Zemeckis, but even if it doesn't work entirely all the time, he is always trying to further the visuals in his films. Sometimes it becomes a uncanny valley mess, but sometimes it is really interesting, and that's what he did kind of with the whole death visuals, and that's what was good. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about writing.
So I guess it's written by David Koepp and Martin Johnson.
Okay. David Koepp is he's written a lot of things that I really enjoy. He wrote he wrote like Jurassic Park. He wrote a movie called Toy Soldiers from 1991. It's not Small Soldiers, which is one of the action figures. It's the one where terrorists take over a school, and it has Sean Astin and Will Wheaton. It's very good. It's a movie that I really love. But yeah, so he's written a lot. The two most recent Indiana Jones movies, whether you like him or not, I do. Yeah, so there's stuff that he's written that's very good. I think the writing in this is good. It doesn't stand out to me necessarily as much as the visuals and the acting does. The acting really sells the writing, but the writing, I don't know. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it because the writing's fine. It's nothing to write home about, but it's also not bad.
Yeah, the writing for me, it's just okay. Like you were saying, the acting is what's selling like this script or like this writing. Kind of on your same your same point, that beginning that kind of just rushes through like these are the characters, this is how they all know each other, and this is how they interact. Mm-hmm. We don't get time to like kind of sit and really take in these characters interacting together, right? It's just we're told like, oh, this is who this is who that is, this is their relationship, this is how they feel about this thing, right? Let's go. And then it gets off to the races, and when they interact, like when they're acting off of each other, perfect. But we don't really get anything that we can put together on our own. I don't know.
Right. No, I completely agree. It does the film as a whole doesn't feel as cohesive from the writing as it does from the visuals and the acting. So I think that the writing does take a little bit of a bump down for me. I've given the writing I've actually given it a 7.5, which is not bad, but it's not incredible. Where do you put the writing?
A 7.
A 7. There you go. Yeah. Now let's talk about overall quality, and I feel like we might have I don't know how this is gonna go. Overall quality of this film, I think because the beginning and end don't work quite as well for me, it does drop it down a little bit. But gosh, that middle just keeps it like the middle of this movie, where just the Isabel Rossellini and then all of the like dead hijinks that happen through it, really. Are very interesting. I feel like it ends kind of abruptly with the whole ending with him having the thing and dropping the thing and falling into all that kind of feels almost rushed. And then when you get to the very end, I like the part where they both fall and kind of break apart. But it does feel like that them arguing in the back feels almost the wrong kind of cringy. Like I feel the wrong kind of uncomfortable. This is not a Safdie brothers discomfort that I'm feeling. It's oh my God, my mom just did something in the store kind of discomfort.
Yeah, well, and I think I think that was the intent of like these two, like they're still alive after all this time, and they are cringy because they aren't able to like take care of themselves, like and do the patch up. And they have the black veils on, and they're just still being their kind of selves. They haven't grown, basically,
right?
Characters, and they deserve each other because they haven't grown as characters, and they still are just like stuck to each other. Like they have to be this unit because they have to take care of each other's bodies. It's like a fate worse than death for them at the end, but they're doing the best they can with it, and they still kind of have this bickering nature with one another. I like that aspect of the ending.
I can see that.
But I liked that also. It still goes back to the LA of it all. Like they still live in, Los Angeles, where everything is very visual forward, like how you look, and they look terrible. Yeah. But they're still here, and they got to do what they got to do.
Right. So that's actually a very good point. I don't know. Maybe in my next rewatch, it'll feel better
rough
about
to
it.
Say, this might just be my brain of like over analyzing.
Right. No, that off. Everything you're saying makes sense for what I think. It's just next time I watch it, I'll kind of consider that and then maybe feel a bit differently about it. What score do you give the overall quality?
Overall quality, I was going from like an 8.5 to a 9. I give it a 9. There's something about it that's just so delightful, and Yeah,
So we are different on this one.
we are different on this.
Because my quality, I do give it a 7.0, and that's not bad. That's like out of 5. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. This is just 7.0 out of 10. That's the same kind of thing. That means good. Like that actually means very good. Like I really really liked it. It just there's a lot of things that kind of bring it down for me. And if it were just the great camp happening in the middle, that it would be much higher. But there's just things about it that just don't always keep my attention, don't always work for me. So for me, I gave it a 7.
Sustained itself stretch it to the beginning and also like a little bit to the. I get it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's basically where I sit. So that puts the total for my ranking, or for my scores, gives us an 8.0 total. Yours gives it a 8.375. That's not too far off. So that is plus. There we go. So that gives this a total of 8.175. We're just going to call that 8.9. 8.19. Not 8.9. 8.19 for this one. So that brings us to Return of the Living Dead, which was our number 1 on our combined ranking. And okay, let's talk about camp, because this one doesn't hit the camp notes the way the other one does. It does hit a lot, like it does. It still does high, but it doesn't feel. It doesn't. A lot of it feels a lot more grounded, and so therefore, it doesn't quite hit the same heights. However, where it is campy, it's incredible.
Yes.
The guy just shouting brains, all the punks and their very stereotypical 1980s punkiness, the calling for backup, constantly calling for backup, and then getting all that's very funny and very very good, and the campiness really does work for me. Talk to me about the campiness in this movie for you.
Campiness is great for me as well. From all the things that you mentioned. Also, one thing that always sticks out to me is so minor is when the first dead body like raises up out of its grave, and it's like a skeleton basically, but he like opens his eyes and he has eyes for some reason. I love that.
I there is so much about this, the campiness that really does work for me, but again, because so much of it felt grounded, it does bog it down a little bit, but honestly, not very much. I gave this a 8.7. Like, it's pretty close. It just brings it down a little bit, but what do you give it on campiness?
I give it an 8.
Okay.
I would have flat 8. And for me, like, yeah, with the camp level, a lot of it is like the fashion for me, like the punks. Love the different punks.
Yeah, that's all. That's all very very good. The slowly dying men throughout the movie. Like you said, there's the groundedness does give you a feeling of stakes, and you do feel like for these guys, but also the way that it keeps coming back to them and they're just a little bit more dead is very funny. And the part where they're finding out that they're dead and they don't have, and the paramedics switch stethoscopes and stuff like that, like that stuff is all very funny and very campy for me. So yeah, that really works for me. Let's talk about acting, because the acting in this, I think, is actually very, very good. It's not on its own. If you're just looking at the acting as a film, maybe it's not all 100% great, but everybody in this movie knows the movie that they're in, and I love that. Like that's the thing that really works for me, is that they understand the camp that's happening, they understand the comedy, they understand the horror. Everybody understands everything about this, and although maybe a lot of the characters aren't going to stick in your mind based on the performances or whatever, they do feel at home in this movie, which is what you want. You really don't want a person sticking out, because you want everybody to feel like they are like that. I mean, people who stick out. I mean, sometimes that's fine. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have anybody stick out, but in this, nobody sticks out because everybody kind of feels at home, and I really like that about that. I will say that the two guys from the beginning who are just dying throughout the movie, they do. If anybody sticks out, it's kind of them. They especially the older guy. He's doing a very good performance throughout all that, and almost a comedic dying performance, which
I mean, we're already in like a horror comedy with this movie, but they themselves serve as like the comic relief that's already in this comedy. So
So for acting, I gave this an 8.5 because I think the acting is very good for the movie that it's in. What do you give it? What do you score it?
Okay, I honestly gave it an 8.3.
8.3. There you go. It's not bad. All right, let's talk about writing. I think the writing in this is whip smart. It's so good. The dialogue is very good. The convention that they came up with to make this a Return of or a Living Dead movie, set in that in that same place, but make it its own thing. It's very good. The jokes all work. It doesn't feel like anything. And honestly, even though there are dated things about it, it doesn't feel dated in a way it is promoting anything that we wouldn't like today. If anybody says something shitty, it's probably the shitty punk guy who we're happy to see get his brains eaten, like that kind of stuff. So
and honestly, what happened to that character was perfect.
Yes.
Because he's kind of the jerk, and
so the dialogue didn't really make it feel dated either, which I think is a very much plus. But just the sharpness of the writing in this, I think, really takes it to the level that makes it so good and makes it so watchable. On that, how do you feel about the writing?
I really like the writing. It's kind of like the opposite issue that I had with Death Becomes Her. I mean, the actors are definitely still selling this writing, but the writing is already so good that I feel like it's easy for them to sell it. Like I said, again, these characters, they're written in a way where it feels like they are actively friends. Even kind of the douchebag lead punk guy, he's kind of mean, but I think in this friend group they just get like that's just how he is, and they don't take it too seriously. Obviously, like he's complaining about like how his punk attire, like that's just his way of life, that's who he is. So I think it just, the writing helps sell that these characters are just friends and they're looking for a cool place just to hang out.
Right. I love that. I completely agree. I actually gave the writing on this a 9.0. I really liked the writing in this movie. What'd you give it?
I gave it an 8.5.
8.5?
A little bit. Yeah.
0.5. All right. Let's talk about the overall quality. We both love this movie, so obviously we feel something for the quality. I think that the quality of this movie is deceptively high. Like it's because it feels like there's certain things about it that feel like low budget comedy, and almost to the point where as a Living Dead movie, one looking at it might feel like it's a lesser, especially because it's a comedy where the other ones aren't really. But I feel like that is, if you strip the baggage away from, because that's some baggage that doesn't really affect the quality, because the quality is what you're seeing when you're watching. I think quality is very high. I think it's a very good movie. I think that it keeps our interest. It's very entertaining from start to finish. The choices that are made in it are intentional and are executed very, very well. So for me, the quality is very good, very high. How do you feel about the quality of this one?
For me, also high quality. And I will admit, one thing that kind of ups the quality for me personally is this movie soundtrack. I love.
Oh, it's very good.
Love that it has like this rockabilly, kind of like psychobilly punk soundtrack. I have the soundtrack like literally on my wall. Like, it's a great soundtrack. Cannot stress that.
That's very good.
So I would say with that, the quality. I mean, I'm just going to give my score, I guess.
Do it. Yeah.
I went ahead and I gave it an 8.7.
8.7. Mine is actually a touch higher because I gave it overall quality of 9.
9.
So that makes your total 33. Nope, got to divide it. Hold on. That makes your total 8.375. My total score for this is 8.8, which brings that one to 8.58, which means that the Return of the Living Dead is our Undead trophy winner. It won the Camp War at 8.58. Well, 8.59 really, and Death Becomes Her had 8.19. So it does. It is our winner today. How do you feel about that? I know that you had Death Becomes Her ranked higher, but how do you feel about?
I agree. I mean, I feel like Return of the Living Dead is the perfect candidate for the Undead Badge. In my opinion, I think it's a great movie. I mean, now that we go back and look back at these older movies, especially in the horror community, I think people aren't really sleeping on Return of the Living Dead or any of the Return movies anymore. They're actively good. They're all meant to be kind of silly and comedic. The third one, not so much. It's more serious. But
really?
It's like a little bit like, but they keep the same like through line of like why the zombies, like they still speak and they talk about why they're eating brains, which I love. Like, I didn't think I needed a reason for why zombies eat brains, but having explained this movie is really good. It does something.
Right.
So.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love that it still has a foundation and that people are still enjoying it today. I love that I got to discover this movie, and I'm very very pleased that this one won our because it was both of it. It was number 2 for both of us, right? Yeah, it was both of our number 2.
Yeah,
but I think that we're both very very pleased that it ended up getting the top prize. Hey, Editing Matt here. I'm just popping in before the end of the episode because, well, this is a new enterprise and I'm still working out the kinks. It will get better, I hope. There are a few things I forgot to mention. Number 1, the artwork for Camp Film Camp was done by my dear friend, the amazingly talented Michelle Wren. I told her a rough idea of what I was looking for and she executed it perfectly. If you want to check out more of what she has to offer or commission something, go to facebook.com/ShellYesCrafts, ShellYesCrafts. Thank you so much, Michelle, for that. Number 2, I did announce the theme for our November episode. Rookie mistake. I'm a rookie. To commemorate Thanksgiving, because a big part of that day is a lot of people watch the football games that are on TV or friendly pickup games that you play with your family. So in November, you'll be able to earn the sports badge. And for this badge, we will be covering Speed Racer from 2008, Slapshot from 1977, Kingpin from 1996, The Water Boy from 1998, and Basketball, also from 1998. So yeah, catch up on those, and we will see you in November. You will now be returned to the conclusion of this episode. I'm very pleased with this. Chris, that was our first episode. How do you feel about that?
I feel good. I honestly can't wait to come back. Like anytime that I'm able to like talk to a friend about movies,
Right.
Doesn't have to be movies that I like necessarily. Even though I did these all movies that I enjoyed, I just like being able to talk about the craft.
Right. I'm super pleased that you were able to be my first guest. I thought we had a really great conversation. I'm going to have you back on, obviously, for because we're doing our Corman series starting at the beginning of the year. So I'm going to have you on for probably a couple of those episodes for that series. But there's another director that I think that I would really like to look at with you. I'm not going to say it now because I don't want to make any promises, but I will tell you off air. But I do think that there's a certain director that will really fit in here, and that you and I will have a good conversation with about. So, yeah, I'm very pleased with this. All right, do you have any? Tell everyone where they can find you.
You can find me most places. Honestly, my handle is Cellar Door Floor. That's me on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. I want to say I don't know anyone who uses that, to be honest. But yeah, that's where I can be found.
Excellent. And you can find me here at Maddie Loves Movies, the MLM you can trust. And you can also find me over on the Dill Pickle Movie Network on Frame Rec once a month. We talk about bad movies. And I'm also on Draft Day and some other shows on there when they will let me. But yeah, so this is exciting. And you've just seen the first episode, and you've earned the very first badge we ever gave out. So once again, my name is Matt. Chris joining me. We will see you next time.
See ya.